So I have a book that is coming out in September 2026, and I'm starting to get quite excited about this book. It has a cover now, it looks beautiful, we've got the blurb for the back. But every time I start telling my friends or colleagues that I've got this book coming out, they make this face at me. They basically make the Sex and the City Aiden face, and they go like, oh, like, why is your book taking so long? Or, oh, that must be really difficult. That's such a long time away. And what I've realized is that people have no idea about what goes on behind the scenes with writing a book, because actually I have been working on this book since the spring of 2022, so 4 years now. So the fact that it's coming out in September is nothing at all to me. Like, that's like a tiny snippet of time in front of me compared to what is behind me. So what I thought would be interesting for people, particularly if people are maybe interested themselves in writing a non-fiction book, is just to go through the process of what it's taken up to this point. And I've written a bunch of notes because it is such a long process at this point. So first of all, I had the idea, and that kind of sprang into my consciousness in the spring of 2022. Once you have a non-fiction book idea, and that is really the most difficult bit, is coming up with an idea for something that you could actually write 80,000 words about, and that you would be willing to spend the next 4 years of your life thinking about, and then hopefully a long time after that you'll be talking about it. So that's the really difficult bit. But once you've got that, then you have to write a book proposal. And this is the document that you will give to your literary agent, and it's what they will take round to the publishers to see if any publisher is interested in publishing your book. And so this is generally about 10,000 words long. I find this process really difficult. It's a really tough intellectual challenge, because you've basically got to write down the structure and all the ideas for the book before you've written it, which I find very challenging. I don't think I'm necessarily particularly good at writing book proposals, and there's always a lot of back and forth with myself and my wonderful agent Andrew. And what I realized when I was writing this book proposal, and I've got a note from an email that I wrote to Andrew, and this was from July 2022. So I've been working on the proposal for a couple of months at this point. Andrew has said he likes the idea. We're gonna have a run at it. But then I emailed him and I said, I have realized that I need to do more on the ground research. I'm trying to say what the angle, outcome, argument will be, but it feels like I'm imposing what the issues are rather than going and learning from people about what they say the issues are in their communities in this case. So I then went away. I put the book proposal down and I went and I did over a year's worth of on-site research for this particular book. And I can only say what this process is like for me, by the way. I've never written anybody else's book, so I can just say about my process and what happened for me. But so I felt ready to come back to the proposal and rewrite it in the summer of 2023. So I've now got all of this research behind me. It feels a lot juicier. The idea, I know what I want to say about it now. But still, there's all this back and forth with Andrew, and we only got to the point where we were both happy with the proposal in January 2024. And it was at that point that Andrew then sent the book proposal off to a raft of different publishers. And this is the most excruciating bit of writing a book, because you are then just waiting to hear if any publisher is going to be interested or not. This is the sort of does the book live or die moment. You keep your fingers and toes crossed, and you have to become really good at dealing with rejection, because unless you are Sally Rooney, even though she writes fiction and not non-fiction, but you are going to be rejected over and over and over again, and that's fine. I remember that, like, that end of the winter and start of the spring very, very clearly. I did then start falling into a pit of despair, literally, like after the rejections came in. My friend Jay did this wonderful course on queer failure. I remember signing up and like doing that. The positive thing that came out of it is I was just like, oh, screw it. I'm just going to do something that I really, really want to do. In this moment where I felt like this project that I by this point invested so much time in, I felt like it had failed. But I was like, I'm just going to do something I want to do and with no pressure on it. And that it was then that I launched my problem page, the patched problem page, which is now one of the most popular things that I write. So it did, that kind of fertile void did have something good that came out of it. Then I got the email from Andrew. You end up, you've refreshed and then it's been months and you're like, okay, it's over. And then I got an email from Andrew and he was like, his exact words were, we've had a nibble. So there was a publisher that was interested. And once you've got one publisher who's interested, Andrew can then go back to other publishers and say, oh, we've had some interest in this. What were you thinking? And the wonderful news is that my proposal, I actually ended up with a choice of publishers, which was amazing. So I had 3 publishers to choose from, and I chose one, and then you meet with them, and then you agree, and then you sign a contract. I guess if you're like a big time writer, this is where you get paid a big check. For me, it's a very small check, and it's also chopped up into little pieces, so you get like a signing fee. Then you've got to start writing the book. So it's only at this point. So in March 2024, I started writing the book. I had a lot of research material, but this is where I started writing. And we had agreed a deadline of May the 31st, 2025. But also remember, I'm not just writing the book at this time. This is not a full-time job. There's just no money for it to be a full-time job. So I'm working mostly at that point like part-time as well. I was writing reports and doing journalism and teaching and all other kinds of things. Such is life. I mean, I'm the kind of person, I like to hit a deadline. I find it challenging if I don't hit a deadline, but I had to renegotiate that deadline and changed it to June the 30th, 2025. But my publisher, my editor, was really, really sweet. And she said she had actually run into an author friend at a party who owed her a manuscript which was 3 years late. And apparently he had like a terrified look in his eyes when he saw her. So I'm not 3 years late, I was 1 month late. But at that point, so that was June the 30th, 2025, I then handed the book into the publisher. And it is then that if you're writing non-fiction and you're writing really good non-fiction, that one of the most difficult parts of the process begins. And this is the legal part of the process. This is where you bring in a lawyer, a very experienced lawyer, media lawyer, who goes through the manuscript, and then you talk about issues like privacy issues or libel issues. That's the big one, like for non-fiction and for the kind of book that I've written. I don't want to be saying anything that is not true, and so then you go through this massive process where your manuscript gets like torn apart by the lawyer, and then maybe like a month later you get handed a legal report that is basically like, okay, you need to go back to these people, these companies, these billionaires in my case, and you need to put what's called a right of reply to them, where you're going to tell them the things that you have said about them and get them to either admit that it's true or refute it or to comment on it. This is so stressful, I can't tell you, especially with all the sort of slap lawsuits that have been being handed out against journalists in the UK, and injunctions and things like this. Like, you just never know what's going to happen. But that's also one of the beauties of the right of reply, is that you're figuring out, like, is this person that I have said this stuff about going to go completely ballistic, or are they just like going to shrug and not care, but are they going to try and shut you and your book down, or are they just going to be like, yeah, okay, it's true what you said, you found it out, it's true, fine, carry on. Luckily, I had finished with the extraordinary stress of the legal process by November 2025. And it's at that point that your editor has read it and likes it, and your lawyer has read it and is happy now because you've done all the work they wanted you to do. The manuscript is finally ready. So we're talking like a year and a half later since you signed the contract. Then you are really not out of the woods then. By that point, the edit begins. So my editor has done an overall review. She's pretty happy. Then the copy editing begins, and the copy editing can be really, really intense and really, really frustrating. For me, the copy edit started in late December, and that's what I've been working on in January, is going through all the comments that the copy editor had. And you have to remember, we are talking about a manuscript that is over 80,000 words. So it's quite an unwieldy beast at this point, and you're having to go through, and answer questions about footnotes and factual details, because this is also a fact check. I should have mentioned that. This is also the fact check of the manuscript. So yeah, it's a really big deal. But I have just finished that. I've handed that back in. The copy edit is now done. At the same time as this, and this is why it does take a long time. At the same time as this, there are 3 parallel processes that have been happening this year. So the first one is the creation of the cover. And in this case, I haven't had anything to do with this. There's an award-winning, wonderful book cover designer who's been working on this with the publisher. And in February, I was given 2 options for the cover, and we agreed on one, and then we had to do a feedback process with some other people and see what other people thought. And, but now we have the cover. At the same time, the other parallel process is starting the endorsement process. So that is basically contacting lovely people that who have some kind of profile and saying, would you like to read my book? I think it would interest you, with the view to giving me an endorsement. So, like the quotes that you get on the book jackets where it says like a must read, or, this book is great, or this book blew my mind, all that kind of thing. So I've been contacting academics and journalists and and generally wonderful people. I had the earliest endorsement came from Lucy Siegel, who is completely wonderful and who has endorsed every single one of my books, which is a huge honor. So she's done the very first endorsement, and so that's been going on, and that just takes up loads of time. And then the third parallel process is the start of the publicity process, because obviously you've written a book, you do actually want people to read it. So we've had publicity meetings where I've been meeting with Sophie, the publicist, starting to talk about where we think the book should be placed, which kind of publications would like to review it. I've already got a sort of preview event that I'm going to go to with my publisher. So that those are the 3 parallel processes. And and also like my own kind of processes where I'm starting to think about like, how do I want my website to look? What kind of photos do I want to get taken? Who do I know that I think would enjoy the book and want to read it? So there's a lot that goes on. Then the copy edit is now done. That is currently being typeset, and that will be done very, very soon. And what we are looking to get at this point is what's called an ARC. So it's like an advanced copy of the book, which is being prepared. It's like sort of edited like proof, so you can't quote it or sell it, but you know, you might see these books around. Sometimes they end up in like charity shops and stuff, but it's sort of a rough edit. That's going, and that's supposed to attract retailers and reviewers as well, and that actually went to the printer on Friday the 5th of March, and that is the document that will then be sent to the proofreader, and then the proofreader will you know, hopefully not, but probably they'll find some more bits and bobs that need to be correcting. I'll get another bunch of questions and queries that I will answer probably in like at the end, towards the end of March, and then there will be a final read through that I will do and that the editor will do, and that will happen in April, and it will be ready for print in May. So yeah, so there you have it. So when people kind of, you know, look at me strangely when I say it's coming out in September, it is a case of like, my God, there is still so much to do, and there has been so much work, and not just by me, but by an entire team of people just to get it to this point. So I hope that explains a bit more about publishing, and the book process. And like I say, this is my process. This is what it's taken, this huge labor of love to get the book to this point. And so yeah, roll on September.